Hello, and thank you for joining our webcast. My name is Jeff Brown, and today I'll be walking through how to run efficient search practices when looking for a business credit report from Equifax. Pulling a credit report on the wrong company can be frustrating. Each incorrect or no file costs you both time and money. Whether you've been pulling a business credit report for a number of years or just starting out, I'm going to provide you with some tips and tricks to find the right report based on the information you have right in front of you. Whether it's for a credit or a lending decision, establishing payment terms, or simply just to know your customer for compliance issues, these search fundamentals will apply across all scenarios. In this session, we'll be discussing Equifax's commercial risk database, specifically how it's used, what it contains, and how it uses multiple sources of data in order to create a commercial risk identity. From there, we'll get into an overview of searching, examining the search target, the business credit report, the search input screens, as well as a list of multiples, and the type of information and insights they can return for you to leverage. With these insights, we'll then take the opportunity to examine 5 search scenarios, how they work, and how to use them to your advantage, essentially outlining how to take full advantage of various methods of access from Equifax's business credit database. Once we understand these insights, we'll then provide exact reference on how you can evaluate what you're currently doing today in order to take immediate action and leverage these into your credit processes right away. As you may already know, Equifax Canada has spent the last few decades working with your goods and service providers as well as clients, and been helping you with those you work with to establish credit. Those within your ecosystem have been supplying their account receivable information to Equifax and helping you establish positive credit history so that when you apply for a credit card or a loan, your credit worthiness can be attested to. At that same point, we've been there to protect you, protecting your business and those you work with from potential fraudulent activity, and then highlighting and alerting you to when that business may represent a higher risk from a credit perspective. This image represents multiple phases and elements across the commercial credit lifecycle, from beginning stages of acquisition and origination to complex late and active stages of portfolio management and debt recovery processes. Each one of these phases contains its own set of business challenges and can represent an area where you or your organization might need to tighten its belt or take a closer examination of how it currently works today. In the commercial world, with adjudication predominantly being done manually by credit managers, it also provides an incredible amount of pressure and bias having these gut feel decisions. Credit file, when used properly, can essentially build a moat around your business and protect your receivables. Until you understand where the business challenges are, there's only so much that can be done to protect your days sales outstanding and your receivables. As I mentioned, Equifax Canada has spent the last few decades building, maintaining, and enhancing a commercial risk database, and consequently, has a deep well of information at your disposal. With over 3.7 million business identities in Canada, this provides a large amount of potential business credit reports for you to tap into. While there are only approximately just over 2 million active businesses in Canada, these surplus identities are actually due to the fact that Equifax Canada keeps records of non-active companies on file for an additional 5 years. In the event that they reemerge or that they're required for any financial accounting or know your customer analysis that are being conducted. The over 5 million trade lines updated monthly speaks to the amount of trade and lending activity that is updated on businesses within Canada on an ongoing basis. 900 active trade contributors submitting active account receivable information to Equifax each month is very powerful. These 900 major goods and service providers have a direct pulse on the financial stability of the businesses in our country, and they're sharing these insights with everyone. If you aren't already providing account receivable information into Equifax, please reach out to us. There may be very great incentives in doing so. So you might ask yourself, why are we talking about the commercial risk database and trade contributions? The answer is that this information can be used to generate the business credit reports that you're searching for. As shown in this image, commercial risk identities are created from not only account receivable information, but also a wide variety of negative occurrence information as well. These negative occurrences are the red flags that drive up the commercial credit scores that you monitor, and help determine if you're actually going to conduct business with someone. And if you are, how much you're willing to be connected to them from a financial perspective. In the top right, industry groups provide trade activity on primarily businesses that run and influence the majority of our economy. Below that, investigations provide detailed insights into which banks and branches your businesses are operating with. In the bottom right, public records provide insights into the potential amount of financial obligation that are tied to legal actions. Whether it's suits or judgments, the details are available for your review. In the bottom left, collections are very important. They should be deemed as kind of an early warning detection system that when negative issues are happening with a company. In many cases, you'll see that a company may go to collections and then go into legal action. And then if that can't be resolved, it leads to the final possible negative activity, a bankruptcy, which is the item on the left-hand side. On average, about 500 of these happen across Canada each month. Depending on the state of the overall economy, this number will fluctuate, and it's a great overall indicator of the health of businesses across Canada. Okay, so we know how all this information is tracked and comes together. Now let's get into the actual searching of these records. Canada is an interesting country. We have millions of businesses across thousands of industries within 10 provinces and 3 territories. And within a lot of business-to-business operations happening online, you don't always know for certain where exactly the credit application you're trying to process may be from, hence the search. So let's take a look at our target. The business credit report, the digital form of information that helps you make an informed decision. Credit, loan, or payment terms is what we've come to know and rely on. It's sometimes neatly packed into 3 to 4 pages, or sometimes even up to a few dozen pages. Regardless, this is our search target. Front and center at the very top of the report is really the key for search criteria, the business information section. These names, locations, phone numbers, and lookup codes are how this company is uniquely identified. The inputs into the business information section have been generated based on commercial risk database elements we just finished going through. The names and addresses, sometimes stored as alias, kind of where these overlap and are stored, layered behind this, even if you don't necessarily see it. Okay, we know the report. Now let's take a look at the online search window that Equifax provides to you to make your credit inquiry. So notice something? Each of the first 4 sections of the search window are related to the elements within the business information section of the business credit report. Let's just do a quick run through. So search by file or search by subject. These search sections are used by users who have pulled a specific credit report before and are looking for a refresh. If you have a company within your portfolio that you are actively monitoring on a monthly or quarterly basis, keying in a file or subject number will allow you to bring up the correct file without having to sort through a list of possible matches. If you don't use these searches today, it may mean that you aren't taking a deep enough comparison into the movement in the risk in your particular businesses. Anyone using these sections will likely open up the previous credit report for that particular company and then compare it to the current. These users typically compare score movements as well as if there's been any changes in the highlights and alert sections, particularly around negative occurrences and their cost obligations. So search by phone number. Every business has a phone number. Even if you haven't dealt with a business in a few years and aren't sure if they're at the same address, there's a very high likelihood that their phone number hasn't changed. No company will share the same phone number. So if you search, you have a unique tie into where to find what you're looking for. And most importantly, what's the most heavily used search function is the search by business name and address. Business name and address are sometimes referred to as the super series of data, and where we'll be walking through kind of the most depth of this webcast. Offering you the ability to search generically through search and find as well as best match, it offers users the flexibility to be as detailed or as loose as you see fit. Regardless, a minimum set of requirements will need to be input before you proceed into the next step and execute a search. If you're used to executing a generic search, you'll also be used to seeing this page, the list of multiples. The screen is your initial search results, where you have some decisions to make. After putting in your search parameters, this view offers you the ability to see potential connection between your credit application that's in front of you and the possible connection to business credit reports in the Equifax commercial risk database. This screen essentially exposes all known alias names and addresses and sorts them based on two primary fields: CLI, confidence level indicator, and file number. So let's start by looking at the file number, as there's a chance you may not have known something that I'm about to actually tell you. As you'll see on the screen, the top 5 returns in this list of multiples all seem to have the same file number. You might be asking yourself, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that regardless of which of those top 5 items you select, you'll in fact be returned the exact same report. You might also ask yourself, why in these top 5 reports is Equifax returning me these same records with the exact same address? Well, remember when we went through the different types of sources that go into create a commercial risk identity? Well, what these multiples reveal to us is that behind these records, there are other known phone numbers, postal variations on how these companies are reporting into Equifax. When you select one of the top 5 records, you'll actually see reference to these in the bottom of the business credit reports in the other known trade style section, just so that you have it for your records. These can be stored for your reference, for example, if you wanted to update your customer reference management system. Next, here's some additional insight from the confidence level indicator and what it means. It is essentially a scored index rating from 3 to 10, which compares the input search request to the input fields that you put in. And based on those results, Equifax categorizes them into 3 buckets: high quality match, an 8 to 10, delivered match, 7, or low confidence match, 3 to 6. 8 to 10 typically occurs when there was enough unique information input into the search form, or there was abundance of information which allowed the search to isolate a particular company you were looking for. 7 is returned when there's typically multiples, but enough of uniqueness for the search to isolate a specific company. 3 to 6 typically occurs when there's very little information that's provided about the target company, and the user is basically trying to scroll through a list of companies with the hope of finding the right connection. If this occurs, it's a good idea to review the credit application that was submitted to you, as there's a good chance there's information you may have omitted from your search. Now that we understand our search target and the types of inputs, let's take a look at a series of scenarios in order to view how these search functions can be used. In the first scenario, the standard online search, which is one of the more popular search formats, as it involves not selecting any optional functions, and it's just filling out the search by business name and address form. The standard search involves inputting a minimum of the business name, street name, city, and province. And as I mentioned, it involves not selecting any of the optional search functions found at the bottom section of the search window. Now let's enter a few pieces of information. Whether it was through an email, an online form, or an application that was difficult to distinguish, you potentially only have a bit of information to enter into the search window. In this case, we are only entering the bare minimum. We have left out street number, postal code, as well as phone number. We'll hit search and see what happens. Okay, here are the results. As discussed about CLI, or confidence level indicator, this list has been sorted through based on confidence level indicator. What we can see is that even though we didn't input the street number and postal code, the same name of the company was unique enough that we had a confidence level indicator of 10, which is an exact match. When we look over the file number column, we can tell that even though the company names in the list are somewhat similar, the file numbers are all different, which means that each record is completely independent, meaning that the credit information from only the record that you select will be returned. When we go ahead and select the top record from that list, we complete that search workflow. The record we select is what shows up, and we can have complete confidence in what was returned. So what are the key insights in this scenario? Even though in this scenario we were lucky enough to have a unique company name, it's important to input as much information as possible. The more information that is input, the more information the search strings have to find links back to the Equifax commercial database. Also, by using the default search logic, it still puts control and power back to you so that you have the ability to review a list of potential matches before selecting an actual report. On to the next scenario, which is best match. Best match can be best described as a way to reduce a step or click in your search workflow. Rather than reviewing a list of multiple results, you put the responsibility back into the system to make that decision for you. Back to the default search screen. What is different in this step compared to the generic search is the fact that you'll be selecting the best match box that is located in the bottom of the screen. Just like the default search, same minimum inputs apply: business name, street name, city, and province. For the sake of simplicity, we'll input the same name values as we did in the first scenario, but have the best match box selected. We'll hit search and see what happens. And what happens? We jump past the list of results or similars and go right into the highest likely report that you were searching for. Same report as the default search. You're just able to get to the point a bit more efficiently and put trust into Equifax's search methodology. So what are the insights here? So based on experience, the search method is recommended when you have the majority of input fields filled out. This is due to the fact that you're essentially putting trust into the Equifax search logic. If your credit application form is completely filled out and has the same input fields as these search fields, you should be able to rely and depend on the search methodology. On to the last online search scenario, which is search and find. Search and find can be best described as where you know up front that you have a limited amount of information, or the information that you do have is perhaps not unique enough to find exactly what you're looking for. So let's take a look back at the search window. In order to leverage the search and find function, you must select the search and find box at the beginning or the bottom of the search window. By selecting the box, what it does is essentially makes sure that only one of the previous required fields is actually required. For the sake of consistency, we'll take a look at we'll take the same company name that we used from the previous two searches, but we'll make it less unique by removing the number that actually made it unique. Note that we will not include street name, city, and province. Let's hit search and see what happens. Okay, so return to list of similars. However, this time we'll take a look at the confidence level indicator. The confidence across all records are the same, so it can't be used to differentiate the target record. We then move over to the file number column. By seeing that all the records are essentially unique, it means that we can't necessarily select one that will represent the majority of the records in the list. So for here, you can either open up the reports one by one, which would be costly and time consuming, or you can take a smarter approach and take advantage of what's being shown as unique. In this case, it's the street number. So this insight or additional information can be used to trigger a memory, a conversation, or a separate web search in order to help you determine which record is the target record that you're actually looking for. Once you've leveraged that unique information to your advantage, the next step is simply selecting that given report. Exactly like the other three scenarios, the report that's selected is exactly the same. Search logic does not change the formatting of the end report that you end up consuming. So what did we learn? What are our insights? Essentially, search and find is best used when there's very little information available, when you need to go through an exercise of discovery in order to find a unique element of that company you're trying to process the application for. This is quite different than the other search types, as it basically establishes up front that you might not know absolutely everything about the identity or prospective company that you're trying to do business with. Okay, on to system-to-system search logic, where we're going to walk through two scenarios for strategies. For context, if you don't perform searches this way already, this is the medium where you're not logging into a website, but instead leveraging a direct coded communication with Equifax in order to automate internal or external credit processing. In this first scenario, a system-to-system best match is just where a similar structure to the online version that we discussed in scenario 2. In this scenario, you have a website or an internet site where you're attempting to process credit applications that have a predefined structure of input fields. This has been set up to reduce risks and extra steps. And you have an element of trust in the user providing as much information as possible in order to properly identify the target business. This connection to Equifax is a single request with a single response. The system on your side complies and provides as much information as possible with the credit application and sends it through to Equifax for the response of the file. Exactly like scenario 2 for online search, the system leverages the search logic and will return the file with the highest level of confidence available for it, that's CLI code. This connection will only return a file when the match logic has a confidence between 8 and 10. This way, the file is returned has a very strong likelihood that it's the correct file. So what are the key insights here? When leveraging the system-to-system connection for best match, it's strongly suggested that the system of origination has a mandatory field requirement for the user entering information into the system, essentially locking out the sending of limited information. This forces the user to dig deep into the business identity prior to submitting it through for processing. And as implied, the trusting of Equifax match logic is set up in order to reduce the interaction for required process and to keep the credit inquiry as automated as possible. The rule of thumb is typically if you're processing more than a couple hundred credit applications a month, you should investigate establishing a system-to-system connection to Equifax. It allows you to automate routine steps and allows you to focus on value-added activities such as ensuring that the logic in your decision and adjudication process is as smooth as possible. This way you can focus on expanding or contracting your rules engine depending on the state of your business in relation to the country or global economy. On to the final scenario, system-to-system conversational mode. Remember the list of similars or similar companies that we saw in the online mode? Well, the conversational mode in system-to-system is meant to replicate that same scenario, however, as a tie into your website or internet application. In this scenario, instead of a single column response from your origination to Equifax, there's actually two. In this scenario, you could have a website or an internet site where you process credit applications with a predefined structure. However, you'd like to provide the option for users to select their target business from a list of possible matches. In this case, you haven't set mandatory guidelines on the fields that are being input. You're just treating them as suggestions. In this format, the initial request to Equifax from your system is a string of populated input fields. And the return from Equifax is a list of possible companies that you could be interested in. Just the list, not the actual reports, just like the online scenario. From there, the website or internet portal will prompt the user to make a selection. And that selection is then sent back through to Equifax as part of a second call, where Equifax returns and processes that business credit report for the decisioning process. So what insight did we get here? Essentially, this scenario aligns providing the user with options. Sometimes for the sake of user experience, we might want to refrain from making things mandatory or cumbersome. And the conversational mode for system-to-system is meant to account for that. Especially if the connection you have is used for prospecting, you may want to consider testing out this scenario, see if it improves the number of submitting applications into you. Okay, now that we've walked through all these scenarios, I'd like to leave you with some items to investigate or consider, which may assist in improving your business credit report hit rate, as well as remove frustrations that you may currently be experiencing. The first thing is the data that you're inputting. So are you submitting all possible information? As we went through in some of these scenarios, it's really dependent on how much information you submit into the system. The more information you provide, the more likelihood you're going to get a higher result and a match to the company that you're looking for. So one thing I would suggest is looking to the credit application process you have today. Make sure that you have as much information that you're gathering from that company as possible. And when you're actually gathering that, making sure that you're mapping that into the input fields at Equifax. So when you submit the form, you're going to get the company that you're actually looking for. User experience. So is your application process difficult to use? Have you had numerous complaints? Or are you actually doing some mismatching to credit files? So if this is the case, as mentioned in a couple of scenarios, you might want to actually have something within your system where you turn on like conversational mode, or are actually looking at those lists of similars. So if you need a bit more information to make something unique or kind of enhance your user experience in your website, you might actually want to look into providing some functionality back to your users so that they can help you find what you're actually looking for. And the last one, so internet or system to system. So are you on the path to auto-adjudication? So more and more companies are actually migrating their internet-based searches into an automated adjudication system. So what this actually means is that rather than taking the time and energy to log into a website, put the information in manually, they've actually started coding things in so that when a credit application is actually brought up within your company, it actually gets submitted online for you, and that you basically have the tools and controls to help with the decisioning. So if you actually wanted to look at certain variables or certain key information within the business credit report that you think your company should be considering rather than just a score, it allows you to get deeper into what you might be evaluating and kind of removes gut feel. So as you can see up on the screen here, there's 5 elements that you might want to kind of question or actually evaluate. So right now, are you just making commercial credit decisions based on scores, or are you looking at more information than that? If you are, it might be something you want to consider. Do you use more than 10 to 15 variables to make a credit or lending decision? If you do, it means that the time you're taking to actually review a business credit report might be maybe too lengthy, or might be something you actually want to be able to automate, have the system actually apply those rules or logic for you. Do you get the impression that sometimes credit or lending decisions are being made by gut feel? This may happen in organizations where you have members who are long-standing and have been doing this for the past few decades. By automating a system, you actually have the ability to leverage this information from those individuals and have them help design your system. So when these credit applications are being processed, you're taking that knowledge from their head, being able to apply it into every credit application, so it's handled uniformly across your organization. And are you heavily reliant on even just kind of one individual? It speaks to the same thing. The gut feel or the go-no decision from 1 or 2 people allows you to empower the entire system, your entire credit application staff, to be able to just rely on what's in the data and help kind of tighten your rules around how those applications are actually being handled. And as well, are there multiple data sources that you use above and beyond just the traditional credit bureau data in order to help make a decision? So are you using business credit report? Are you using social data? So a lot of companies who have system connections pull in other data sources as well in order to make decisions. So you use it as one of multiple pieces of information to be able to make a decision. Okay, so we've covered a lot of information in a short period of time. So let's talk about taking action. If there are any questions or issues that you're currently facing, or even need guidance on how to build a strategy around the various stages of the commercial credit life cycle, whether it be acquisition, risk modeling, scorecarding, adjudication, fraud management, portfolio management, or debt recovery, you have access to Equifax consultants who are well-versed in the B2B credit space and can help you unlock the data-driven insights you're looking for. One recommendation is that you should strongly consider a match rate analysis. This is where Equifax will review all companies that are within your portfolio and provide you with a mapping of the risk profile of your entire portfolio. So if you're interested, reach out to your account representative, as this exercise is potentially free of charge. So we've run through an overview of Equifax's commercial risk database, the elements that go into searching against that respective database, 5 separate scenarios on how searches can be performed, as well as some tips and tricks in order to automate and enhance your overall search practices today. That takes us to the bottom line. Searching for a business credit report is strongly dependent on the information that you provide, as well as the features that you enable. Whether you're depending on the system to point you in the right direction or entering a small amount of information in order to potentially discover the right target, Equifax has created the structure for you to implement your search strategy. Thank you for choosing Equifax as your trusted credit bureau. If you have any questions, We're always here to help.